I tried out 9 different games during this year's Steam Next Fest, which is a week-long event with demos for all sorts of upcoming titles. It's a way for developers to find an audience for the games they're currently making, gather valuable feedback to make those games better, and for you, the consumer, to try out potentially fun stuff and see if it's something you'd like to play once it comes out or not. Now, I am someone who tends to stick to getting mad at one single video game every goddamn day all year round, so this time I decided to go outside of my comfort zone a little bit, basically just clicking whatever I thought looked cool while scrolling through the list of demos, even if it's a game of a genre that I'd never even played before. So these are the results. This is what I liked, this is what I loved, and this is what I hated. Want to find out more? Keep watching, and the results may shock you. The first game I decided to take a look at was an action roguelike called Winblown. I found out later after trying it out that this was developed by the same guys who made Dead Cells. I played Dead Cells when it came out, I enjoyed it quite a lot, the combat system especially felt really nice and satisfying, and this game in that regard is no different. Combat feels great, overall the game I would say feels very polished. It is clear that they were trying to make a good impression on the player with this demo, which I very much appreciated. It's got this cutesy, colorful, I'd even say ethereal aesthetic going on here. The world is basically made up of a bunch of floating islands somewhere high up in the sky. I would say it reminds me of Risk of Rain 2 somewhat, because it also uses these hard shadows and comic book style outlines around characters and objects, but unlike Risk of Rain 2, the colors are very bright and saturated. In that regard, I'd call it closer to Hades, and the inspiration from Hades clearly doesn't stop there. It's also evident in the combat system. The way combat works is, you've got 2 main weapons that you can alternate between anytime you like. You can also dash. Your dash button pretty much has no cooldown and you use it to dodge enemy attacks as well as traverse the levels. Later on you get a passive that gives you special attacks if you complete a combo with one weapon and then use the other one immediately afterwards. You get a damage bonus as well as a cool looking extra attack effect. Now here's the kicker. You have to complete the combo with one of your weapons and then attack with the other without dashing or dodging away. If you dash, you reset the combo, but not dashing opens you up for enemy attacks. So in a way the game makes you create your own difficulty for yourself. You want to do these combos because they look sick and make encounters go faster since you do more damage, but you also want to not get hit and you have to balance that somehow. Overall, I'd say the combat feels extremely tight, everything feels good and responsive, attacking and dashing is very satisfying, and you never really feel sluggish, which for a game with fast-paced combat, such as this one, is in my opinion extremely crucial. Now in terms of weapons, there's plenty of variety here. You've got your basic sword, which is the thing you start with, a sword with a jumping attack, throwing kunai that build up curse stacks onto enemies, and then you can trigger those stacks manually when you want. There's a rhythm game crossbow, a backstab-oriented dagger, and there are probably a couple other fun weapons in the demo that I just haven't personally encountered. Some weapons are more basic, some have gimmicks, others also have special attacks that you activate with a long press of the button. There's a lot, and I'm sure the full game will have a lot more. I personally really enjoyed playing through all the different special attacks that the different weapons have to offer. My favorite was definitely the jumping sword, the playstyle just suited me perfectly. I really loved the combination of mobility and power in that weapon, and yeah, it just felt great to use. Finding better weapons isn't the only way to get stronger though. First off, you've got trinkets, which are special abilities that go on cooldown when they're used. Then you've got gifts and boosts. Boosts are very straightforward. It's basically like, do you want 10% attack speed? Do you want plus 50 health? It's just a flat upgrade to your stats. Nice, but unremarkable. Gifts, on the other hand, are conditional upgrades. They either require for something to happen to trigger, or for you to play in a specific way. Doing upgrades this way makes for a much more dynamic experience in my opinion than just your regular old stat boost. My personal favorite gift probably was the one that gave you a damage boost every time you dodged. It perfectly synergized with my jumping sword gameplay. So basically I dodge, I do a jumping attack, I dodge again, I do another jumping attack, on and on and on. It's fun, it's good, it's satisfying, it's cool. During gameplay you'll collect various forms of currency, which you can use to buy healing, other currency, town upgrades, character upgrades, or unlock weapons, trinkets and gifts. The town didn't have that much stuff in the demo itself, just a couple shops really, but the actual town area is quite large and I'm sure there will be a lot more to do in there compared to how it is now. Now, as far as criticism goes, well, I'd like to mention some things for sure. I found the music to be overall pretty bland and boring personally. It's not that the soundtrack is necessarily bad, it isn't by any means, but throughout playing the game I kinda was just listening to the same 5-minute minimalist loop over and over, and I think the fact that the soundtrack is pretty minimalist kinda works against it, in the sense that after a while it does get kind of boring and you just end up tuning out. There were also some UI inconsistencies. Grabbing some buffs, for example, will require a short press, whereas others will require a long press, which to me doesn't really make that much sense. In terms of difficulty, overall I found the game to be a bit too easy. Sure, I died a couple of times, but after 30 minutes of practice the entire first level becomes a cakewalk, and I imagine it being pretty annoying to go through over and over and over again if you have to clear it every run you do. Also, please change this character's dialogue. Reading someone speaking pseudo-millennial internet slang is just unbelievably grating. Oh my god, why? Overall the dialogue was pretty fun though, I enjoyed most of it. So to sum it up, I enjoyed Winblown overall for sure, so that's definitely a wishlist for me. And if you're a fan of Hades, you'll probably like this one too, so give it a try, see what you think. The next game I tried was Voin. It's a game being made by a sole developer in Unreal Engine 5. The name translates to warrior in Russian, and I would classify it as a boomer slasher of sorts. And you know what? It's fucking awesome. To be honest with you, I could gush about this game for ages, that's how much I liked it. It boasts genuinely one of the most satisfying combat systems I have ever seen. You feel the force behind every swing as it tears through your enemies. Slice after slice, you cut yourself a path forward through untold hordes of all manner of undead and demonic creatures, gracefully evading lethal blow after lethal blow so that nothing can stop your dance with death. The harvest season has come, and you are the reaper. The creator was clearly inspired by Elden Ring here, but make no mistake, this isn't one of those Souls-likes where you're thrown into an unfamiliar world and forced to fend for yourself. You're not sent here to survive, but to thrive! You are the hunter, you are the predator this time around. This is hack and slash in its purest form, with you only being limited by your own creativity, personal choice of weapons, and of course, your skill. Back in the hub, you're able to upgrade your character, learn new abilities to fight more effectively, and improve and identify your gear, before venturing back out into the world. The open world is split into 4 large areas that you navigate to by taking one of the 4 portals in the hub area, although only one of them was available in the demo. And you can customize how difficult you want the experience to be before you actually venture out using this thing right here. While exploring, you'll come across various weapon and artifact drops from chests and enemies. Each loot piece has a couple of traits, one specific to its type and one chosen randomly. For example, the red steel broadsword on the left here has a rage build-up mechanic, while the viper's saber on the right has a poison build-up mechanic instead. Higher item rarity means more powerful effects. Once you drop a new item while exploring the world, you'll be able to use it right away, but you won't know what it actually does until you go back to your tower and cleanse it of its corruption. Doing so will take some effort, however. You can't just retreat to safety anytime you want. You have to ask your master to open a portal for you and then navigate to it without dying. Dying means you drop all of your Ica, basically the soul's currency of this game, and corrupted items on the spot right where you died. But worry not, for Master will guide you to the spot where you got defeated and give you another chance to reclaim your honor. If you couldn't tell by now, I absolutely adored my time with this game. I love DMC games, and this feels like that but in first person. It's not just the combat system making you feel like an all-powerful warrior god cleaving your way through hordes of zombies, it's also the movement. You're able to dash and double jump. If you have your weapons sheathed, you also gain access to a long dash. One of the unlockable skills in the demo is an aerial charge attack. Whenever you move around, the camera does this old school style sway, and best of all, there's absolutely no fall damage, so you're able to move around as fast as you desire without fearing for your life. In fact, you're actively encouraged to drop down big heights, as doing so will cause your guy to zap everything around him in a big area. The art style is similarly reminiscent of old school boomer shooters. The lighting and particle effects are quite high-tech, but the game itself is very much stylized with low-res, pixelated textures, low-poly models with sharp edges, and hard lighting. Honestly, I think this works for the game very well. First off, you're able to get away with actually completing a game like this as a solo developer. Second off, it plays very nicely with all the old-timey mechanics this game has. Thirdly, it helps a ton with visual clarity. And finally, it makes optimization way easier. The developer himself has stated that a game as fast-paced as this shouldn't just target the 60 FPS benchmark. So I was very happy to not really suffer any performance issues even in an unoptimized demo like this one. If you want, you can even turn on a retro filter that makes your game super pixelated. If you're a fan of that aesthetic, you get to both enjoy it and also boost your FPS by a bunch. I, however, preferred playing with it off personally, as I generally prefer visual clarity to stylized visuals when possible. This game is not without its flaws, of course. I've run into numerous invisible walls that definitely shouldn't have been there. The enemy variety is a bit lacking. Sure, killing zombies feels very satisfying, but it gets kinda odd killing the same kind of zombie over and over again after a while. Also, if there's a guy shooting projectiles at you from behind a bush, it can be kinda hard to see and evade, and sometimes some enemies feel kinda bullshit, so that's definitely something the creators should address before the full release. The world is quite large and that's a good thing, but it doesn't feel great to die in some far off area and then have to spend a bunch of time getting back to your corpse. Now, don't get me wrong on this one. Fast travel is the last thing I'd want to see in a game like this, but it would be nice to have some sort of an unlockable shortcut network system maybe. The game already has these anchors in some spots that let you teleport short distances, so it would be cool to have something like that available to quickly transport yourself back to this or that corner of the world. This is clearly a work in progress demo and there's a general lack of content. Overall, however, what's already here is absolutely phenomenal, and if you're going to have any one takeaway from this video, please, just please play this demo. Trust me, you won't regret it. During this next fest, 3 of the games I played ended up being Vampire Survivors clones, so I decided to combine them into one single section since they're all so similar to each other. I've never actually played Vampire Survivors before. I mean, I've seen gameplay of it, at this point who hasn't, and I more or less understand how these games work, but I've never tried anything like that myself up until now. All of them had vastly different themes. One of them was themed around Nordic mythology, another set in a knockoff Pokemon universe, and another had a bunch of demons and shit. If you're new to this genre, allow me to catch you up real quick. Basically, you'll run around and shoot everything that moves, set everything drops gems, collect enough and you'll level up, at which point you'll get to choose an upgrade for your character. Survive for long enough and you win. Got it? Good. Now let's talk about the games. The Nordic game looked pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, the only reason I ever installed it was cause the screenshots on the Steam page looked nice and I wanted to play a cool looking ARPG. Just too bad that Jotunnslayer turned out to be a Survivors clone instead. But no matter, I gave it a decent shot anyway, playing it for just under an hour in total. The gameplay was very straightforward. Move with WASD, dash with space, Q to use your active skill, and left click to hit if you hate yourself. Seriously, if there's one thing I learned about these games, it's that playing them without autofire is unbelievably annoying and it's just not worth it whatsoever. You pick what quests you wanna do, and then you go and do them. So like, collect 5 mushrooms, kill these mini-bosses, survive this encounter, and so on. If you manage to both survive and also complete the quests, you get some upgrade currency, which you can then use to unlock new weapons and armor sets. Different weapons have different skills, but unfortunately I don't know what different armor sets do because I genuinely forgot that they exist and I didn't check them before closing the game. The game felt alright, but honestly I wasn't much of a fan. I played Ranger and he felt really brain dead. I then played Warrior and he felt a lot weaker and worse to play. But that's probably because he's melee and melee doesn't seem very well suited for a game like that. Or maybe I'm just bad. One or the other. The default difficulty is piss easy and unengaging, but you can't play the higher difficulties right away for some reason, and after almost an hour of gameplay I still didn't have enough currency to unlock even a single weapon. I felt like I was surviving the wrong thing, that thing being boredom instead of the actual challenges that the game was throwing at me due to how bland the gameplay was. I wasn't excited to get the next skill upgrade or whatever, I wasn't excited to fight the next boss, complete the next quest. I was just excited for the timer to run out so I could get out of this goddamn run. Maybe it hits different if you're a fan of this genre, but for me personally, I'd never recommend it. The next game on the list was TemTem Swarm. I decided to try it out since from the outset it looked like the complete opposite of something I would ever consider playing on my own, and surprisingly enough, I would say it was actually my favorite out of all the Survivors clones I played. The art style is definitely not for everyone, no hate, but to me the game looks like it was made for kids, and there were some issues with controls. WASD felt really unresponsive, so I just stuck to using left click to move around for the most part, but the rest of the game actually turned out to be pretty great. I really liked the leveling system in this game, how it felt a lot more focused on building synergies between the skills and items you get instead of just picking the strongest thing on offer, and how improving these skills and items weren't just brain dead stat upgrades. Take a look at this skill for example. Leveling it from 2 to 3 gives it a bit of damage and projectile speed, but leveling from 3 to 4 gives it significantly more area of effect and decreases its cooldown. Doing skill scaling this way gives you more to think about as you level. For example, maybe you want to hardcore invest into a certain skill up to a certain point to hit a significant power spike you're looking for, and maybe that means passing up other stuff that would improve your early game, but not necessarily scale as well. I think games like these, where the gameplay is relatively simple, really benefit from more strategic depth. It makes these games more fun to play through several times over, and makes you feel smart for figuring out some cool builds and leveling strategies. There were also apparently hidden synergies between various skills, but unfortunately I was unable to test that out as I simply didn't manage to find any within the hour of time that I gave this game. I liked the challenge events a lot more here as well. They felt far more exciting, varied and rewarding, and some of them were genuinely difficult to complete. At 15 minutes into the run you get ganked by a big bad boss, and that boss has actual mechanics that you have to play around. The graphical indicators were kinda weird. I had a few instances where the game told me the boss would do a charge attack in a certain direction, and then the boss would end up deviating from the telegraphed path like a second into that charge and hitting me anyway. But overall, boss battles were pretty fun, and I enjoyed the map markers that would periodically appear and guide you to various points of interest on the map. I was honestly really surprised by just how many progression systems this game had. First off, you have various challenges that unlock new items and stages as you complete them. Then, there's the ability to upgrade your PAL using the currency you acquired during gameplay, and while the upgrades themselves generally aren't too exciting, it's just passive stat boosts after all, there's a lot of them, so it always feels like you're working towards something. And finally, you can get discount Digimon next to unlock more discount Digimon to play and level. From what I gather, each Pokemon has 2 different elemental affinities, which determine the skill options upon leveling that together with different traits and active skills allow for all sorts of different playstyles. For example, the guy you start with by default, Platyped, has a passive that gives you more damage the more you upgrade your water skills, but the guy I managed to unlock next, Oreo, has a dash available to him right away. Assuming every different pal has a special quirk like that, you're gonna have a lot of incentive to keep playing this game and trying out different heroes with different builds and seeing what you can do with them. All in all, I was really impressed by this demo. It's not perfect, but overall the level of polish is very high, there's a lot of content to enjoy in here, and I might even consider wishlisting it despite the art style being so cutesy and the genre not really being something I play very much. The final Survivors clone I played was Bloodshed, and the best way I can think of to describe it is, Bloodshed is what happens when you take a boomer shooter with sprite-based graphics and put in some Survivors game mechanics. It looks cool, it sounds cool, especially the double-barreled shotgun sound, god damn! And it's kinda fun. The characters have a bunch of different stats, and I honestly have no clue what most of them do, especially since there were only 2 characters available in the demo, so I couldn't really test and find out, but different characters do have different item pools to select from during level ups. The enemy variety was alright, it didn't feel bland, and it was definitely fun mowing down hordes of Doomstar zombies, cultists and demons, but at the same time it could definitely be better, especially given that a full run lasts 20 minutes, and killing over 1,000 of the same half a dozen or so enemy types across the span of 20 minutes can get a bit old. Navigating around the level is quite fun. Your character moves around very fast, which makes dodging around enemy projectiles while shooting everything that moves really satisfying. That said, it's not all roses. The leveling system is not very fun because you generally have just one worthwhile option during level ups. The melee items all suck on a conceptual level. After all, why would you put yourself in strike range of mobs when you can just shoot them instead and do just as much, if not more, damage without risking losing any health? And the guns, well, most of the time you'll probably just want to upgrade the gun you're using right now, because switching to anything else would be a pretty big DPS downgrade unless you pump that other item full of upgrades too, but then that means you're leveling something that doesn't directly benefit you right away, and might not do anything for you at all, because what if you discover that even after all these upgrades the other weapon is still not good enough, which means you're limited to taking boring stat passives, upgrades for your current weapon, and items that automatically trigger once in a while, which are nice, but there's only like 2 of them. There's also some minor stuff, like how having auto-fire feels weird when using a shotgun, even though I get why auto-fire is a mechanic, and how you get pop-ups for elite monsters or bosses without any way for you to actually find them without blindly running around the entire level, but my biggest complaint is that the game just feels way too derivative. It doesn't innovate in any significant way other than just being first-person Vampire Survivors with an indie boomer shooter flavor. It's just not particularly exciting. With all of that said though, I still had fun, and if it's cheap enough, I would definitely consider picking it up. It can be a very nice source of dumb fun, a way to relax and unwind after a long stressful day by blasting the shit out of a bunch of demons. And if they address the issues I brought up, I think it can go quite a long way. All in all, I ended up wishlisting it, and I recommend you do as well if you're a fan of these sorts of games. Not so much so if you've played so many of them that you're looking for something new though. So for this next game, SUPERVIVE, I had this whole bit here trying to parody how a TikTok influencer would read out the description, because it is quite funny how hard it tries to sound cool to that crowd, but it was too obnoxious, so I decided to cut it out. So just pretend you saw something real funny here, okay? And don't forget to leave a comment about how much you liked it. Thanks. Anyway, I've played my fair share of MOBAs over the years, and we don't get that many new titles coming out these days, so I figured, why not give it a shot and see how it feels? The game started off with a pretty decent tutorial, introducing all the ability and movement mechanics. It didn't really explain anything about items though, which was a shame since itemization is such an important aspect of any MOBA that has them, so I didn't really know how they worked. But that's fine, because after all, when has not understanding a game's fundamental mechanics ever stopped MOBA players from confidently clicking on the Find Game button and proceeding to ruin everyone else's experience with their sheer incompetence? So that's exactly what I did, and shortly discovered that this game has committed the most cardinal sin in all of multiplayer gaming: a voice chat system that defaults you to having an open mic. Seriously, who does this? Why? Have the devs never played a multiplayer video game before? Doing this is genuinely evil as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, the gameplay loop is more or less what you would expect. You start off on your battle bus, drop somewhere, fight the monsters / players around you, farm up, level up, maybe get items, move to the center once the walls start closing in, keep farming, upgrading your items, getting stronger, and on it goes until your team is the last one standing. From the outset, it was pretty obvious to me that SUPERVIVE took heavy inspiration from League of Legends, with the UI, art style, and general design of the game, with everything being a skill shot and items having an ability power stat. And don't get me wrong, nothing here is actually a problem. After all, you probably want a game heavily focused on PvP to be mostly based on skill shots and mechanical execution. What I did have more of an issue with, however, was the game's performance and minute-to-minute feel. It's been a very long time since I last played Battle Riot, to be fair, but if there's one thing I remember about it, it's how tight it felt to control. Moving around, attacking, throwing out and hitting spells all felt very responsive, something I unfortunately cannot say about SUPERVIVE. I have no idea why that is. Maybe it's due to the animations feeling kinda janky, maybe it's the FPS, maybe it's something else, I honestly don't know, but it's something that they should definitely look into in my opinion. And speaking of FPS, this game has no business running as poorly as it was. I was barely getting maybe 70 to 90 FPS on average, which is definitely playable, but considering my specs and how the game looks, I just don't see any valid reason for it besides poor optimization. And yeah, I know it was just a playtest, but the game is due to come out in November, so they better hurry up if they wanna fix it before launch. Anyway, after successfully losing my first match, I happily bought the most difficult hero in the game because she looked cool, played around with her skills a bit in demo hero mode, and queued up for another game, eager to properly try her out. We dropped in, farmed some mobs, I then died to game mechanics. No! Got rezzed, ran into some people, got away, had a bit of a goat moment. Seriously, check out the skill shots, man. God damn, I'm good. Got third-partied and fucking died. Oh me guys, I was solo carrying, team bad, you know the drill, all that stuff. At that point I felt I'd seen enough and decided to move on to something else. After all, MOBAs are complicated beasts. It's not really possible to evaluate them properly without sinking a few dozen hours into them at the very least. So instead my goal was to figure out if this game was at all worth trying or not. And to that end, my answer would probably be yes. Did I enjoy it? Yeah. Am I in love with it? Not really. Does this game have potential? Yeah, for sure. Would I play it a lot? Realistically, probably not, mostly due to time constraints if anything, but I can see it being something fun to hop onto with a couple of friends and just run around clicking buttons and stuff. So if you're looking for a MOBA that won't consume your entire being for playing it, this game might be a decent option to consider. They really should fix the FPS though, it's really unacceptable for an esports title to be running like this in 2024. The following section is for games that I didn't play for a significant length of time for one reason or another. I don't want to just completely ignore them, since I did end up checking them out at the end of the day, but obviously I won't have as much to say about them as I did about the games that I was covering up until now, so I'll just try to run through them and give you a quick summary of what I liked/hated about them, and whether or not they might be worth your time. So, here goes. Rivals of Aether 2 caught my eye because of several reasons. First off, it was a fighting game, and I don't really have much experience in those aside from a little bit of Tekken, so I was intrigued to try out something new and unfamiliar. Secondly, it seems similar to Smash. I'd never actually played Smash myself, but I had heard a lot about it, and I thought it would be cool to maybe try something like that out. And lastly, the art style looked fun. Say what you want about it being a fair game or whatever, it looks fun, alright, I don't have to defend myself on this one. Now, here's the problem. I could not find anyone to play it with. The first day I tried playing it, the matchmaking button didn't give me anyone and the lobby list was empty, aside from one guy called Ass Stretcher. I wasn't really in the mood for that at the time, so I decided to leave it and come back the next day. Unfortunately, the matchmaker was still not giving me anything, and the lobby list was completely empty that time around. And as you might expect, it's kinda difficult to evaluate a game if the only experience you have playing it is sitting in an empty lobby figuring out what your buttons do. Looking back on the footage I have, there might have been a way to play versus a CPU, but that unfortunately did not cross my mind at the time, so all I can say is that the in-game controls did in fact feel very responsive. In my defense, the game didn't do a great job of introducing itself to me. There was no tutorial, the new player guide in the menu was just a link to a webpage with a bunch of text, and text is scary. And the arcade mode didn't work in the demo, so I was just stuck playing against myself. Maybe this is an EU-specific issue, I don't know, but it seems like the game's player count post-release is actually pretty decent. So if you think this looks like something you'd be into, maybe consider picking it up. I can't really vouch for it one way or another though. Another game that I can't really speak much on is V.A Proxy. I saw it on Steam and I was like, ooh, this looks kinda Risk of Rain, and you've got a cool sword, this is gonna be fun. So I installed it and the menus didn't work. So I Alt F4 and reopened it, still nothing. And then I figured it out. You're supposed to navigate the menus with WASD. Not arrow keys, not the mouse, WASD. I also found that pressing Q closed the game. Whoops. Now take a guess at what you have to press to actually press the start button. Is it enter? Nope. Space maybe? Good try, but wrong again. Left click? Yeah, right, very optimistic of you. No, you're actually supposed to press E. I mean, I can kinda see the logic, but typically we don't consider menus interactable, so this doesn't really make too much sense, but whatever. So I start a new run and I'm welcomed by a bunch of cryptic text and the option to lock a weapon in my grip. I mean, I wouldn't exactly phrase it like that, but sure, I guess I'll take the enemy sword, please. More cryptic text is then followed by another choice, where as far as I'm concerned, any option is the same because I have no clue what the hell any of this does. And then almost a full minute later, you finally get to play the game. And I'm using the word play here very liberally. Right off the bat, I noticed just how laggy the game felt. For some reason, it was hard locked to 60 FPS, and you could instantly tell this was a Unity game, which, at least to me, is not a good sign. I jumped down a bunch of platforms and landed somewhere weird. I tried going straight ahead and ran into a really annoying, really ugly mini-wall that I couldn't jump over, because I could not jump at all. Not to worry, I found a doorway I could go through that had something that you could jump down into, which I did. A rejank animation followed, where I died, I think, but that's okay because now I had Scuffed Wheatley on my side, and now I could finally jump and hit stuff. Bear in mind, at this point I still have no fucking clue what I'm doing, because absolutely nothing was explained. No controls, no mechanics, nothing at all. I did learn you're not allowed to jump into water though, as you instantly get teleported out. I tried fighting some enemies, but the combat felt like I was just randomly teleporting all over the place with no rhyme or reason. And after taking a couple of hits from God even knows what, I ended up in some weird limbo world. I somehow managed to get out by running around and pressing random buttons, but closed the game shortly afterwards because I still had no clue what was going on or what it was doing, what my goals were, how the game worked, and why I should even continue playing. I looked around a little bit to try and find out more about this game, and apparently it's got a pretty big following on Twitter and Patreon. To be honest, I was really surprised by that, because as far as I was concerned, I just experienced nothing more than a tech demo for an upcoming indie anime hack and slash. In theory, I could enjoy this as I love Devil May Cry, but this was just completely impenetrable. Come back in a few years once it's actually playable, I guess, and until then, stay away unless you wanna spend hours digging through online resources to learn the goddamn control scheme. Like, come on, at least put up some text explaining what buttons to press once you start playing. It's really not that hard. And I'm not trying to just shit on the game either. It seems like it's an indie game made by a solo developer. I love these success stories and I want this game to succeed, but at the same time, I feel it's very important to actually make your game playable to the average person that doesn't follow your game's development and hasn't even heard of it up until now. These Next Fest demos are a chance for you to make your game seen and bring in an audience that is previously completely unfamiliar with your work, so it was really disappointing to see not even a modicum of effort being put into the new player experience. The final game I played was Rift of the NecroDancer. I only played like 20 minutes of it, but I had fun. I like rhythm games. I used to play Osu a few years back, and unlike Osu, this probably won't give you arthritis by the ripe old age of 28. I really liked the visuals on this one. The characters dancing to the beat really makes you want to bob your head along as well. And you end up vibing to the music while clearing out monsters and trying to get a good score. Hitting perfects is satisfying, and it seems like the later stages will have quite a lot of cool twists and mechanics, which I admittedly haven't seen for myself as I didn't really get that far into it, so take that for what you will, but I did find the aesthetic to be pretty cute, and overall I would say this game has a very solid foundation to build off of. The mechanics are kinda hard to describe because I don't know a lot of the more advanced stuff, and the rhythm game mechanics are generally pretty self-explanatory anyway, but I'll try my best. Basically, you have 3 lanes of monsters advancing towards you with every beat, and your goal is to hit the buttons associated with these respective lanes as soon as the monster comes up to you. Some monsters take several hits to clear, others move in weird patterns, and yet others move in between beats. At times you're required to hold the button to clear some long boys, and once you defeat enough monsters, you gain access to a power-up button that acts like a score multiplier for a little while your girl goes Super Saiyan. And of course, it is very important for you not to miss anyone while playing. Miss-time you hit and you lose your combo that you've worked so hard to build up, and if you hit someone way too late, you take damage. Take too much damage and you lose. Pretty simple at its core, but really hard to master, as most rhythm games are, especially if you wanna go for that perfect score at the higher levels. The built-in beatmaps that I've played have been pretty good, and I cannot imagine a world where this releases without support for custom beatmaps, so I think it will definitely be worth your while to pick this game up if you want a relatively chill rhythm game to play. I mean, I don't doubt that at the higher levels this will get quite intense, but I'm like 99% sure it won't get anywhere close to looking like this, and it probably won't cause it to do this. So all in all, I would definitely recommend you check this game out. I have personally wishlisted it, and I suggest you do the same. So that's that. My final ranking is as follows. Avoid V.A Proxy and Jotunnslayer, unsure about Rivals of the Aether, consider SUPERVIVE, Rift of the NecroDancer and Bloodshed, probably check out TemTem Swarm and Winblown, and please play Voin. This is my first time doing something like this, and in general this is my first time playing so many different games in such a short period of time, so hopefully this was at least somewhat valuable and or entertaining. Please feel free to comment about what you did and didn't like, and if you wanna see more stuff like this from me, consider subscribing. For now, that's about it from me. Thank you very much for making it this far into the video, and I will see you all next time, whenever that might be.